You have to compare the press releases with the reports. That's very important. And you have to interpret the reports by yourself. That's another thing. So you have a look at the reports and you have to pick up the data you need.
Andy, did you mean the reports that companies publish about test results or the test results themselves?
Actually, I originally meant the reports that you published, but I actually like the way Peter answered it as well, which is, and I think you can answer both, which is, what should you read when a vendor talks about their their results, and then what should you think about when you're reading the reports? So it's really a two-part question.
Well, I don't know how to answer it's just a reality. It's just, it's saying, the Jamaican bobsled team can say we are the Jamaican bobsled champions, Yeah. And it's true. I mean, the fact that it just, participating in Olympics is a different story. So I'm not sure whether we'll be able to avoid this sort of scenarios. When I read various testing reports, obviously it's very interesting the angle, what has been tested, how the products have been responding, but I'm really not trying to judge the best and the worst. It's more like best scoring within the realm of the test. Because if you compare different organizations, you will have different order of the winners and losers. So it's really difficult in the end and say, hey, we have a beautiful, objective story which will give you the absolute rating of vendors. We don't have yet, we don't have Olympics, where we have, one race in which there is definite, first, second, and third place. So you really have to give yourself more time and not just, look, see the test and then just go, leave to the back page and say, who was the top and just take it from there.
So yeah, what Peter said about, don't believe what the vendors say. I mean, come to the sites, read the reports. That's number one. But in terms of how do you interpret it, I would say it's easier or the best use of it is to learn what not to buy. Right? So as an example, we did this test and people got upset with us about it because we had recommendations. We said, here's the products we recommended. Here's neutral, meaning they were somewhere in the middle, and then caution. Now, the caution basically was, you shouldn't buy it, you should not renew it, go buy a different product. And for this, it was the socially engineered malware, which is about 50% of infections are coming in through URLs. So it's a pretty big vector. People said, well, you didn't test the whole product. Well, if the airbag doesn't work, let's say Toyota, if my brakes don't work, then, okay, it's not the whole car. There may be other wonderful attributes about the car, but I'm going to go buy a car where the brakes work, right? Same thing in this case. If there's something major that doesn't work, cut it off your list. There's plenty of other products that do work that you should have on your list. And that's how I'd say it's using our reports. It's the top. I mean, there's always a margin of error, right? So I'd look at the top few vendors and say, okay, they're good. The guys at the bottom, I know I don't want them, right? So, and then as Peter mentioned, I mean, there's management attributes. There's other things that are important as well. So, hopefully that answers.
Yeah, but I mean, I would add to that, Vic. Is that I mean, people still need to, you need to read the report to understand, Turing testing for the airbags. But
exactly.
Also, with the airbag example, you still have places in the world where, airbag is an optional accessory. So for them, this test is of no particular relevance. Right. So you have to just, look at the criteria and see, is this important for me? If it's important for me, then it's sort of you can follow the results and a special detailed description on each behavior.
Exactly.
So I want to just kind of push back on the panel here. I mean, I understand there's subtlety in the reports, and you have to read it, draw your own conclusions, and so forth. But at the same point, I mean, there's a reason why consumer reports exist, right? Most people just go right to the chart and they look for the ones with the filled-in circles.
Well, we make recommendations for that reason.
Okay. So, but is that the best we can do? Which is, these are the ones that are okay, and everybody else you can whack. These guys you should whack from your list. I mean, that seems to be where many of my enterprise customers are, which is they have a set of vendors that they perceive to be more or less okay, they recognize that nobody is fantastic, and that they're going to be, there's a certain amount of mediocrity in all of them, and areas where they're all good, and there's some vendors. So, and then there are people that they know they just don't want to buy. I mean, is that essentially the best we can do right now?
No, I mean, I mentioned before that we sell the exposure data, so the detailed information. So the idea is that you could look at your SIM product, let's say, or your patch management product. So you have Big Fix, or you have ArcSight, or whatever. You have vulnerability management. You have information of what endpoints you have. We have information of exactly what got past each product. So you can match those things up and see which product works best for you. And we sell that database. So frankly, that's where most of our revenue comes from. It's not from. I mean, the test reports themselves are sort of the marketing piece to let people know that, we've done this test, and if you want the detailed information from an enterprise perspective, talk to us. So I think here you sell consulting, right? So, yeah.
What we see in much companies, that antivirus products are wrong configured. That's one of the things. There is a antivirus product installed, but it's not maintained. That's one of the problems. So in these cases, and also in governments, where there are IT guys, but they don't have any ideas sometimes from what they are doing. So they need an external consulting from a company, or even from the vendor himself, that he goes into the company and have a look at their product, because they are sometimes totally misconfigured. That's a big problem. And you can use the best product, if you're not configured in the right way, it's very bad. And that's in large companies, we have seen this.
Yeah. So, I mean, my view is the test reports themselves, again, they're informative to a certain point. But, when you start talking about buying a product, I mean, I believe you need to get scientific about it. You need to do a gap analysis. You need to, really take a look at it. That's not something you're ever going to get out of a report, because everybody's environment's different, and that's where, Peter's consulting, or the work that we do, really comes to play.
I think it boils down to the trust you have in the testing organization. I mean, it's sort of like some people love Gartner, other people love Forrester, right? So, they read one or the other, rarely both. And when it comes to sort of consumer reports, I mean, how many people in this room actually have consumer reports subscription? Anybody? Oh, one, maybe, or two, So it's not really something that 100% of the users will ever subscribe to or be interested in checking the recommendations. So I think it's not such a severe story. I mean, I think are very much a skeptical lot that to look for things that are interesting to us, and then once we're building the reputation, reading interesting things and start believing certain recommender, we are influenced.
Hopefully this is a relevant question, but there's only, in my mind, a certain finite number of major server hubs that information will travel through around the world. Is there an opportunity to partner with these ISPs to independently monitor some of that traffic that comes through there, to apply your testing methodology against AV problems at that high traffic level?
Good question. The short answer is not much of an opportunity, because the ISPs are working on razor-thin markets, have pirated software, whether their users they're downloading porn, whether they're downloading malware. They just want to be the pipe. And for them to work with somebody to get this information, basically, it scares the heck out of the legal people over there, because they don't want to set a bad precedent. So it's a good idea from a technical perspective, not going to happen from a business perspective.
But it also scares the business people because the cost implications.
Exactly.
You could imagine if you're trying to filter 10% of the U.S. traffic. I mean, it's you're really looking for Google-sized budgets for that, and I mean, I don't think the AV companies could fund that, and definitely not the testing organizations.
Yeah.
Okay. One of my last questions here for the panel is, we talked a little bit about some of the changes in the methodology.